John Sweeney, you've been to Ukraine a lot. My brother and brother-in-law both were British Army colonels. We've had long conversations about this situation. My brother was always from the start clear that he did not believe Ukraine could win this war militarily without the Americans actively getting engaged in fighting themselves, which was never going to happen. What is your sense from Ukraine's side? Because many people thought they would roll over very quickly. That never happened. They've shown extraordinary resilience in this war. But we are, as General Clark said, pretty much at a stalemate, possibly edging in Russia's side here. How does this end?
It ends with Russia being crushed because Putin does not want to stop the war. But listen, the Russians have taken a million casualties, either dead or horribly maimed so that they're out of the war. And if the war stops, then maybe Russia will wake up from its zombie brainwashing state and go, what the hell was that about? Why have we lost so many people? Ukraine, in fact, has been doing your brother or your brother-in-law were dead wrong. Without American boots on the ground, Ukraine has fought heroically and bravely and incredibly inventively. So for almost my entire life as a war reporter from the late 80s, I've been dodging artillery. And that's normally in history, or certainly in the First World War and the Second World War, being hurt or killed by shrapnel from artillery was the major cause of death. Not bullets, but shrapnel from artillery. Now, in the last couple of years, from 2023, 24, and certainly this year, it's drones. And the Ukrainians led with this. Now, what's happened is the Chinese are supplying an awful lot of drones. And one of the big strategic nightmares about this is if Russia gets some kind of victory, then China will be encouraged to go and invade Taiwan. So it's absolutely in the West's interest, not just in terms of Europe, but in terms of global security. The simple point of principle, which we in Britain went to war in 1914 and then in 1939, is that no nation state should seek to get bigger by invading its neighbors. And that's a very, very good principle. And it leads to stability across the world. And Russia, under Putin, has broken that principle. And that is why there will only be peace in the world, or a better chance of peace in the world, if Russia is defeated. And the problem has been not Ukrainian courage. There's a lot of it, because frankly, if they give in, if they surrender, then it's over for them and for their nation and all the horrors that go with that. So they're going to keep on fighting, come what may. The problem is that we in the West have lacked the will to really help Ukraine, and we've lacked the common sense to understand that Putin is the killer in the Kremlin. He's no friend of ours, full stop.
Okay, Henry Sardaryan, what is your response to that?
Well, I hope it's not a cheerleading contest or, a place where we come for declaration. If we have to make analysis, I haven't heard of any type of report or analysis in the Western think tanks issued by the Western think tanks, which would ever consider a real possibility that Russia is going to lose on the battlefield. Usually what I see is that the Western countries should put a lot of effort in order to destabilize Russia inside in terms of our inner politics, try to overthrow our constitutional order. Usually that is the main target, which is set by those big think tanks. So for these years, maybe starting from 2014, starting with Barack Obama, we've heard that we're a small regional country with a disastrous economy and that we're going to be destroyed just like this. If the Western countries decide to start sanctions against our country, then Russia is going to be destroyed. And that started in 2014. And up until now, each year there are interviews and panels like this, which are usually discussing how is that possible the Russian economy is growing, Russian army is growing, etc., etc. So it is obvious that no matter what are your ethical values or your view on the conflict, it is obvious that the way in which the Western countries reacted during these years on Russia's, well, at least questions which were put by our political authorities, the way the Western countries reacted is not efficient. It doesn't work. Because initially, before starting the special military operation, Russian authorities, Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs and our president, they asked only for one thing, that maybe we can meet and discuss the security structure and security architecture in Europe. Because we have a lot of issues which really are problematic for our country, because during this year, starting from 1991, Russia hasn't moved towards NATO for an inch, because we never have enlarged our military union towards European countries. But each time we've heard that in order to to contain Iran, we have to take Poland and Baltic countries as part of NATO. And that's why there were many issues which were usually problematic for Russia, and Russia wanted to discuss them. But usually the answer was that we should shut up and that no one is going to discuss anything with Russia. And each time it happened, then we were asked that, you should stop. You should stop this, you should stop that. And as a result, we can even look into the negotiation process right now. For a year or two, Russia was telling that we are ready for ceasefire, and we were told by the European countries that no ceasefire is needed. We need a full-scale peace agreement. Now, when Russia says that, okay, we want to discuss a full-scale peace agreement, which will include all the issues that should be dealt with, we are told by the European countries that, no, we need a ceasefire right now, a 30-day ceasefire, a 2-month ceasefire, but no full-scale peace agreement. And my personal opinion is that a peace agreement it could be reached, but with all the due respect, that is an issue which should be discussed between the President of Russian Federation and the United States, because the issues which we should settle, or as President Trump likes to say, the deal we should make, it includes a lot of questions which are concentrated not only in Ukraine, but around Europe as well. And that's why we need those negotiations between the leaders. We need to address those questions. But I personally, I don't know how we can make a deal in the way the European countries want us to make it if during the 3 years, the only thing we hear is that the European countries are getting ready for making a war with Russia. I hear it each time from German Chancellor, which says, or the German Minister of Defense, that in 2029 we are going to have war with Russia. I think that's not the best rhetorics we need if we are going to reach a peace agreement.
Okay, before I go to you, Scott Horton, I know you've been waiting patiently. I just saw you gesticulating with facial expressions there that suggested, John Sweeney, you weren't entirely agreeing with what you were hearing there. So very quickly respond.
Yeah, well, we've just been listening to the Kremlin's dross. The reason why the Baltics and the Poles, for example, do not want to be any part of the Russian world is because the map of Eastern Europe that Putin wants to go back to was drawn up by Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin in the Midnight Pact of 1939, the Nazi-Soviet Pact. And in that, the Nazis got Western Poland, and the Soviets under Stalin got Poland, Eastern Poland and the Baltic states. And then after the Second World War, pretty much the whole of Eastern Europe. So guess what? The moment the Soviet Union collapsed, all of those countries wanted to join NATO, which is a defensive organization, because they didn't want to be invaded by Russia again. Russia is not a democracy. It's a fascist state. Russia invaded Ukraine twice. Ukraine has fought like a Bengal tiger for its freedom and independence. And Henry is a servant of a tyrant who murders his critics. So Henry has been talking utter rubbish.